He stood there in the cold rain, his shoulders trembling, his socks soaked inside worn-out shoes, and his backpack clutched tightly against his chest like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. The other students laughed as they passed. "Janitor's kid," one whispered, loud enough for him to hear. "He does not belong in there." But no one expected what would happen just minutes later. A black car would stop in front of the school gates, and everything would change forever. The rain poured down relentlessly, soaking through the thin fabric of Bobby's hoodie. He stood just outside the school's entrance, his feet inches from the red line that marked the boundary between welcome and not allowed. Behind him, students shuffled into the building, dry and warm, glancing over their shoulders to laugh at the sight of him standing in the downpour like a lost child. "Principal said you are not allowed inside," the security guard muttered without eye contact. "Until your father returns to work, you wait out here." Bobby said nothing. He had heard enough over the past few days. Ever since his father, the school janitor, had broken his foot, Bobby had been treated like a ghost. Invisible when it was convenient, and a stain when someone needed to blame a broken window or a dirty stair. He looked up into the gray sky, rain washing down his cheeks like silent tears.
He did not speak.
He did not cry. He simply stood there, the weight of shame pressing into his skin heavier than the rain. His lips stayed shut, and he refused to let them see his pain. Laughter erupted behind the glass doors. A boy shouted, "Bobby is taking outdoor classes now." More laughter followed. Several students pulled out their phones and began recording, delighted by the humiliation of the janitor's son. Bobby closed his eyes and tried to imagine he was somewhere else. Anywhere else. Then, without warning, the sound of tires rolling up the wet road silenced them. A sleek, black Cadillac SUV came to a slow stop right in front of the gate. The laughter died. The security guard straightened up. Even the students with phones lowered their hands, curious now. The driver stepped out, tall and dressed in a sharp black suit. He walked to the passenger side, opened the door, and called out, "Mr. Bobby Jenkins?" Bobby opened his eyes. He turned, unsure if he had heard correctly. The driver looked straight at him. "Sir, I have been sent to collect you. Mr. Worthington is waiting." Bobby froze. His backpack slipped from his arms and hit the wet ground with a dull thud. Every student stared, mouths parted. The janitor's son had just been called sir. Bobby hesitated. His feet felt rooted to the wet concrete. The same kids who had mocked him moments ago were now silent, eyes wide, watching every movement like it was a scene from a movie. He glanced down at his soaked clothes, then up at the driver, unsure if he was dreaming or being pranked. "Are you certain?" Bobby asked, his voice small beneath the rumble of rain. The driver smiled politely and nodded. "Yes, sir. I have your name, your school ID, and instructions to bring you to the estate." Estate. That word alone made Bobby's stomach twist. He had never even been near anything called an estate. His entire life had existed in small, rented apartments with leaky faucets and flickering lights. And now a man in a suit was calling him sir and opening the door to a luxury car. He looked back at the school. Behind the glass doors, dozens of students stared, some recording with their phones, others simply frozen with disbelief. One girl, the same who had laughed at him for being poor, now stared with her mouth slightly open, her hand still midair from pointing. Bobby took a shaky breath, picked up his backpack, and walked slowly to the car. The driver helped him inside, carefully closing the door behind him. As soon as it shut, the sound of the rain softened. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something floral, and the seat cushions swallowed his weight like a warm hug. For the first time all morning, he did not feel cold. The driver returned to his seat, started the car, and pulled away from the school without a word. Bobby leaned back and looked out the window, watching the building shrink behind him. "May I ask where we're going?" Bobby said softly, still unsure if he should be speaking at all. "To the Worthington estate, sir," the driver replied calmly. "Mr. Worthington has requested to meet you personally." "But why?" The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, then said, "I am afraid that is for Mr. Worthington to explain. But I can assure you, this is not a mistake." As they drove through the city, Bobby pressed his forehead against the window. Skyscrapers, streetlights, and unfamiliar roads passed by. He had never been out of his neighborhood before, not like this. The further they went, the more the surroundings changed. Brick buildings gave way to wide, tree-lined streets. The houses grew larger. Fences became gates. It was another world. Eventually, they reached a massive iron gate adorned with golden initials. WE. The driver pressed a code, and the gate opened slowly. The car rolled into a long driveway, flanked by hedges trimmed with perfect precision. At the end of the path stood a house so large Bobby could not see the edges of it from where he sat. Mansion did not feel like the right word. It looked more like a palace. The car stopped, and before Bobby could gather his thoughts, the driver opened his door. A tall, older man with white hair and a navy blue suit waited at the entrance, standing beneath a marble archway. "Welcome, Bobby," the man said, his voice warm but firm. "My name is James Worthington, and from this moment on, your life is no longer what it used to be." Bobby stepped out of the car slowly, his sneakers squishing from the rain still trapped inside them. The cold wind hit his damp clothes, but his skin felt numb. Not from the weather, but from disbelief. The man standing before him looked like someone straight out of a magazine, regal posture, polished shoes, and a calm authority in his voice. Bobby tightened his grip on his backpack, unsure of where to stand or how to breathe. Mr. Worthington extended a hand. "You're safe here, son. Come inside. There is much to discuss." Inside the estate, everything was quiet, eerily quiet. The floor gleamed like glass, reflecting the golden glow of hanging chandeliers. Paintings lined the hallways, and the air smelled faintly of vanilla and old books. A maid approached, offered Bobby a warm towel and dry clothes, and gestured toward a private restroom. 10 minutes later, Bobby stood in the mirror wearing clothes that fit him perfectly: navy slacks, a crisp button-up shirt, and even socks that did not have holes. He hardly recognized the boy staring back. He looked normal. Maybe even better than normal. When he returned to the grand hall, Mr. Worthington was seated in a leather armchair beside a tall window. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please sit." Bobby obeyed cautiously. Mr. Worthington studied him for a moment, then said, "Your father, Samuel Jenkins. He saved my son's life 20 years ago during a military operation overseas. I was never able to repay him properly." Bobby blinked. "You knew my father from the army?" "I did not just know him," Worthington said. "I owe him. My son would have died in that ambush if your father had not pulled him out of the wreckage with a broken arm. He took 2 bullets that day and never once mentioned it to anyone." Bobby felt his chest tighten. He remembered his father's limp. He had always assumed it was from an accident at the school. "Your father refused any reward," Mr. Worthington continued. "He said, 'I did my duty. That was enough. But now, I have found a way to honor my promise. Through you." Bobby's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" "I want to sponsor your education, your training, your future," Worthington said, leaning forward. "Not out of pity, but because I believe you have something this world lacks: dignity without pride. And I want to see where that can take you." Bobby felt the room spin for a moment. "You want to help me?" "Yes," Mr. Worthington said with finality. "But it will not be easy. You will return to school. You will work harder than you ever have. And you will face those who looked down on you, with your head held high." Bobby looked down at his hands. They were shaking, not from fear, but from something deeper: hope. "I will do it," he whispered. "I will not let you down." Mr. Worthington smiled. "That is the spirit. And tomorrow morning, your journey begins." The next morning, Bobby stood outside his old school's gates once more, but this time, not as the forgotten boy in soaked hand-me-downs. He wore a tailored school uniform, his shoes polished, his posture steady. A black sedan idled behind him, and the school's security guard, the same one who had turned him away in the rain, blinked in confusion. "Mr. Jenkins?" the guard asked hesitantly. Bobby nodded once. "Yes. I am here to attend my classes." Without another word, the gates were opened. Bobby walked past the same red line where he had once stood for hours in the rain, his heart beating louder than the morning bell. Students turned to look. Some paused mid-sentence. Others gawked openly. Whispers filled the courtyard. Is that Bobby? Where did he get those clothes? Why did a driver drop him off? He looks different. Bobby ignored them. He headed straight for the main office, where the principal was discussing something with two staff members. The moment the principal looked up and saw Bobby, his expression tightened. You are suspended until your father returned, the principal said stiffly. I am here under the Worthington Foundation, Bobby replied, handing over a sealed envelope. They have enrolled me under full sponsorship. I believe this includes tuition, meals, and all academic programs. The principal took the envelope, opened it, and paled. His fingers trembled slightly as he scanned the contents. The Worthington seal stamped at the bottom was impossible to deny. He cleared his throat and forced a smile. Well, of course you are welcome back, Mr. Jenkins. Bobby gave a polite nod. Thank you, sir. As he left the office, his heart was thudding. It was not revenge he felt. It was power. Not the kind that crushed others, but the kind that helped you stand taller after being kicked down. Walking through the hallway, he noticed students watching him differently now. The girl who once recorded him in the rain looked away. Her friends whispered behind cupped hands. Someone said, he is not just a janitor's kid anymore. He reached his classroom and stepped inside. Silence fell. The teacher glanced up from the attendance sheet. Bobby Jenkins, welcome back. He sat at the empty desk near the window, where no one had ever wanted to sit beside him before. But this time, he was not alone for long. One student slid into the seat next to him, then another. And another turned and offered him a pencil with a quiet smile. The tide had shifted. Still, Bobby knew this was only the beginning. Mr. Worthington had told him, they will respect you now, but make sure you become someone who earns it. And Bobby was ready to do just that. Days turned into weeks, and Bobby embraced every second of his new life with quiet determination. He arrived at school early, stayed late, took notes meticulously, and aced every test that came his way. His eyes remained focused, not on revenge, but on growth. He remembered what Mr. Worthington had told him. Let your results speak so loudly, no one can ever silence them again. But change, even good change, stirred discomfort in others. Some students still whispered behind his back, unsure whether to treat him with awe or suspicion. One afternoon, during lunch, a student named Calvin, the loudest voice from the day it had rained, cornered Bobby near the lockers. So, Calvin sneered, you think wearing a tie and getting dropped off in a fancy car makes you better than the rest of us? Bobby looked at him calmly. No. But working hard every day to become better than I was yesterday does. Calvin had no reply. News about Bobby's scholarship and his connection to the Worthington estate had spread beyond the school. A local newspaper featured a short article. Janitor's son awarded elite sponsorship, defies odds. Teachers began treating him with newfound respect, and counselors encouraged him to apply for Ivy League summer programs. But Bobby remained grounded. At home, things were changing too. Mr. Jenkins, though still recovering from his injury, seemed lighter. He sat straighter, smiled more, and often said, your mother would have been proud. Their small apartment now had new bookshelves, courtesy of the foundation, and Bobby had his own desk to study at, something he had never had before. Then, one Friday afternoon, Mr. Worthington invited Bobby to his estate again. In the library, surrounded by leather-bound books, the old man handed Bobby a folded letter. This came in today. I thought you should open it here. Bobby unfolded the paper slowly. It was a letter from the National Science Scholars Program. He read the words twice before the meaning hit him. Accepted, he whispered. Fully funded. Mr. Worthington's eyes twinkled. You earned it. No one gave you anything, Bobby. You took the opportunity and turned it into a victory. Bobby looked up, his voice unsteady. Why me? Because when others laughed at you, you kept standing. That takes more than strength. That takes character. That night, Bobby walked home beneath a sky full of stars, the wind soft against his face. He remembered the rain, the humiliation, the laughter. And he smiled. Graduation day arrived like a sunrise after a storm. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, students dressed in caps and gowns, families packed into every seat. Teachers stood by the stage, clapping as names were called. Parents cried. Cameras flashed. But Bobby sat quietly near the back of the student section, hands folded in his lap, eyes steady on the podium. His name had not been called yet, but everyone in the room knew who he was. In the weeks leading up to graduation, Bobby had been selected as the student to deliver the farewell address. Not because of sympathy, not because of pity, but because he had earned the highest GPA in the senior class. The janitor's son had risen to the top. When the principal stepped up to the microphone and said, "Now, please welcome this year's valedictorian, Bobby Jenkins," the room went still. Bobby walked to the stage slowly, deliberately. The same principal who once denied him entry now handed him the microphone with a handshake. Students who had once mocked him now leaned forward in silence. He began. "There was a time when I stood outside this very school in the pouring rain, not allowed in because of who my father was. That day, I believed the world had decided my worth." He paused. No one moved. "But someone reminded me that your worth is not decided by where you come from, but by what you choose to do every single day." He spoke not with bitterness, but with grace. He thanked his father for teaching him dignity. He thanked Mr. Worthington for giving him a chance. He thanked the few students and teachers who had believed in him before the world noticed. He ended with this: "If you ever feel small, unseen, or unwanted, remember this. Storms do not drown you. They prepare you for the sky." The room erupted, not in polite applause, but in a standing ovation. Some parents wiped tears. Even the principal clapped longer than anyone else. And somewhere in the back of the room, Mr. Worthington stood with a proud smile and eyes full of warmth. After the ceremony, a group of younger students surrounded Bobby. "You are the reason I want to keep going," one girl whispered. "I used to be ashamed of my dad's job," said another. "Not anymore." And Bobby? He did not say much. He only smiled, hugged his father tightly, and looked up at the sky, where the clouds had finally cleared. He had once been left in the rain. Now he walked in the sun.